You're listening to the Travis Makes Money podcast presented by GoHighLevel.com. For a free 30-day trial of the best all-in-one digital marketing software tool on the planet, just go to GoHighLevel.com/Travis. Hey, what's going on, money makers? Welcome back to the Travis Makes Money podcast, where it's our mission to help you make more money. Today on the show, we're going to be talking all things solopreneurship with my new friend, Liz Steblay. Liz has decades of firsthand experience as a successful solopreneur, in addition to mentoring thousands of other independent consultants and executive coaches. She's the author of the best-selling book, Succeeding as a Solopreneur, and she's the founder and chief advocate of the Professional Independent Consultants of America, an educational organization and virtual community. She's also the CEO of her first business, ProKo Agency, a national talent agency for independent consultants. So all things entrepreneurship, solopreneurship, owning your own schedule, creating your own freedom. I can't wait to jump into this conversation with Liz. But before we do, if you're curious about how I build the relationships that I have with the amazing people here on the show, it's been through having a podcast. And a podcast can not only help you explode your network, but grow your personal brand, sharpen your expertise, build content for social, grow an audience, and then even pay you sponsorship dollars to do all of that in the long run. So if you're curious about what a podcast could do for you and your business, I'm taking a couple one-on-one coaching clients. Not sure how long I'll do that, but right now I'm enjoying it. So if you're curious at all about starting your own podcast, travischappell.com/coaching. There's a quick application right there. Fill that out. Maybe we might be able to work together. travischappell.com/coaching. Now, without further ado, Liz, welcome to the show.
Good morning. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you for joining me. Let's start off with an easy question for you. Tell me how you made your first dollar and then how you made your most recent dollar.
My first dollar, I am the youngest of 5 kids, and my brothers used to pay me $1 to wash the dishes when it was their turn.
That's awesome. Already solving problems from the very beginning.
Yeah, there was a need, and I was there to fill it, and they'd give me $1.
Perfect. So that's like the exact answer I was looking for, the literal first dollar that you ever made. Okay, so what about most recent dollar? What do you do now?
My most recent dollar, my income comes from 3 different sources. My primary income comes as being CEO of my national business called the ProKo Agency, which helps negotiate contracts and handle the compliance for independent consultants with Fortune 500 companies. So that's where my steady income comes in. My more erratic income comes in from my mentorship through the Professional Independent Consultants of America, or PICA, and I get paid to I do boot camps, mentoring, I hold office hours. It's an educational organization and community, but that money is a lot more erratic because it's sort of my side hustle.
Sure.
And then the third way that I make money is through some real estate investments.
Oh, great. I heard the term solopreneurship a bunch in the last few years, but I think it's relatively new to culture as a whole. Seems like you've been doing it though for a really long time. Why is that?
I've been doing it for before the word was invented, that's for sure. I've been a solopreneur and entrepreneur for over 20 years. I fell into self-employment back in 2004 when I got laid off from a job. Prior to that job, I had worked for a global consulting firm. So I had called, when I got the news of the layoff, I called a former client and I said, "Hey, I just got laid off. Do you have any projects? Need any help?" And he said, "Are you kidding? How soon can you get here?" So I literally fell into independent consulting simply by making a phone call, but it really wasn't that simple. One of the keys to success is to keep your network warm and keep in touch with people so that when that weird situation happens, it's not awkward to call a former client and say, "Hey, I just got laid off."
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's definitely one of the keys to success. And that first year, I made more money, worked fewer hours, didn't have to deal with any big firm BS. I lowered my effective tax rate and had more quality time with my kid. And I said, "Okay, that's it. I am never going back to a quote unquote real job. I'm going to figure out how to make this work." So that was in 2004, and
Wow.
I never looked back.
So you were kind of forced into solopreneurship in a certain way.
Forced, and it was sort of an accidental encounter, right? So I was laid off. Most normal people would polish their resume and go find another real job. Uh, but I don't know, some instinct just took over, or fate or something. And I called that former colleague, and next thing I knew, I had a contract before I even had a laptop. So I don't know if it was fate or destiny or luck, but yes, changed my life.
You mentioned something about networking there, and you're speaking my language. This show actually used to be called Build Your Network, so it was very much specifically related to how entrepreneurs can grow better relationships. Tell me some of your relationship building tools and techniques. Like, where was the best place to go meet these people? How do you nurture these relationships over time?
Yeah, it's shifted a lot since the pandemic, right? Uh, my cardinal rules used to be one person in person once a week. And that could have been anybody, really. It could have been somebody I already knew, could have been somebody from the client, could have been somebody from the I often partnered with large technology companies because I worked on systems implementations. But I always made, no matter how busy I was, I always made the time for one person in person once a week. And
Love
then,
that
of
rule.
course, it's easy to remember and it's easy to track, right?
Hmm.
Did I have a conversation with somebody this week?
And to be clear, before you jump into the COVID thing, this is agendaless, correct?
No, yeah, yes, right. Agenda less, no agenda, right? So, for example, let's say I was working on a technology implementation. It was like one of the stressful periods, and we have to go get lunch. I'd reach out to the client or somebody from the tech team, and I'd say, "Hey, do you want to walk down to Subway, get a sandwich, and then walk back?" And on that journey, we would not talk about work. I would find out whatever else I could about them. Well, what'd you do? What'd you do your last vacation? What do you do when you're not working? Well, how'd you get into this crazy business? Who's your favorite sports teams? Where'd you go to college? Do you have kids? Do you like German Shepherds? I'll anything just to build a relationship.
Yeah, yeah.
And then it was about keeping in touch with those people. So, and that's kind of goes to the COVID part. It was harder to meet new people during COVID because we weren't out physically in places. But I would have virtual cocktails with old colleagues. I'd say, hey, let's have a 5 o'clock happy hour via Zoom and bring your own cocktail. And that's how I maintained my relationship during those dark years. And now it's kind of a hybrid, whether it's in person, but the mantra still works. One person in person once a week, as long as you can consider a Zoom meeting sort of in person.
In your opinion, is who you know or what you know more important, and why?
I would say what you know is more important because if you're smart enough to figure things out, you can persevere and you can make more money. And then you can find the right people to talk to.
Hmm.
That's kind of probably counterintuitive advice coming from somebody who makes money as a mentor. But but yes, when people step into self-employment, the biggest thing they need to overcome is FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. I call it the FUD monster. When you're thinking of being self-employed or if you're even starting a side hustle, that little creature that whispers in your ear is larger than life.
Hmm.
Who are you to step away from a full-time job? You don't know anything about negotiating a contract. You don't know anything about setting your rates. You don't know anything about business development or sales or contracting. All of those doubts, fear, uncertainty, and doubt is larger than life when you're undertaking anything new, but particularly if it's your income.
Hmm.
And so actually the 6 keys to success that are in my book, that's the first one, be prepared to vanquish FUD. And backtracking a little bit, the third key is to constantly grow and nourish your network. And there's lots of practical tips in the book for how to do that.
And how do you vanquish FUD?
One of my favorite tricks is called name it and tame it. If you can slow your brain down long enough to capture if it's a fear, uncertainty, or doubt, then you can start to grapple with it. And let's say it's a, a doubt. What happens if I fail? Well, then you can say, well, how can I learn more about this to make sure that I don't fail?
Yeah.
Right? You can start to unpack it. Or if it's an uncertainty, you don't know anything about negotiating a contract. Well, how can I learn more about this to build more, have more confidence?
Yeah, I like that a lot. To name it and tame it is a really great tool. I have also found value in allowing myself to go down the path of the worst case scenario and feel what it would potentially feel like to end up there. I think
Exactly.
I think sometimes we have a tendency to want to avoid that thought process or avoid that discussion because the feelings are not good feelings, and we want to avoid those feelings of doubt and those feelings of uncertainty. But it's been really helpful for me just to like go there, sit there for a second, and then ask what changed. Is did I die? Like am I unable to move forward? Is there any, am I all of a sudden limited in my opportunity because this thing didn't work out the way I wanted it to? And then when you take that perspective too, you can kind of identify obstacles that you would not have been able to identify otherwise. Like if you are constantly only thinking about the success and you're not thinking about the ways that it could fail, then you're not as set up to be able to handle the potential obstacles that are going to come your way. So I really like the framing of the name it and tame it, and then asking yourself that question is like, okay, so what if it does? What's gonna, like, what will literally change in my life if it does?
You will
And
have learned a lot, that's for sure.
yes, yes, and visit that worst case scenario. Oftentimes, it's not as bad as you think it is. First of all, and then second of all, you might uncover potential obstacles that would lead to a path of failure that you might not have uncovered if you only thought about what it takes to be successful.
Excellent advice.
Tell
Doesn't
me,
directly lead to making more money.
what's that?
That part doesn't directly lead to making more money.
No, not
And
yet.
and I would say the single biggest mistake that people make when they step into self-employment is they undercharge. So you need to be able to charge what you're worth.
Hmm,
And then for people who have been self-employed for a while, they tend to undercharge because the easiest way to charge is by the hour. But the longer you do something, the faster you do it. So the
hmm,
less money you're making.
yeah,
So the longer you've been self-employed, you need to switch to either fixed fee pricing or hybrid pricing. Hybrid sounds fancy, but basically it's just what part of this consulting project or this coaching package or this financial plan, whatever, what can I charge a fixed fee for, if not the whole contract, at least a
yeah.
piece of it? Because that's where the real money is in fixed fee. And then maybe the part that you're uncertain about, you don't know how much time it's going to take, then you bill that by the hour or something. But there's several tips in the book for how to charge what you're worth.
There's that story, and I don't even know if it's true, honestly. It could just be a legend at this point, but of Picasso when he's sitting at a dinner table and the waitress recognizes who he is and he's a well-known artist or whatever. And she asks him to whip something up for her real quick. And so he draws something on a napkin, like a self-portrait of her with just a few lines, signs it and gives it to her, and then charge like some obscene price. Again, I don't remember the details of the story or even if it is absolutely true or not, but it's the lesson remains. So bear with me. So he gives her, the drawing, and then she's just taken aback by how much he's charging for the drawing. And she's like, "But this only took you 30 seconds to make. How can you possibly charge this much money?" Said, "It took me 30 years to be able to draw something like this in 30 seconds." And that's the core takeaway. That's the lesson. It's not, you're not charging by the hour. You're not charging by how much time it takes you. You're charging for the solution to the problem that you're solving,
Exactly.
regardless of how much time it takes you. If you're a plumber with 30 years of experience, it might only take you 10 minutes to come in and solve a problem. And maybe that customer might be upset that you're charging as much as you're charging to solve that problem. But if they brought in an experienced plumber, it might have taken them 3 days to figure out the same problem. And and
Yes.
and so, like, which one are you going to be? You have to price for the value that you're bringing, not price for the time that it takes to solve the problem.
Yes. And that's the big mistake that a lot of people make when they first transition, they don't charge enough because they don't do the math to figure out how to find out what a good rate is. And then they lack the confidence to quote that with confidence. They lack the confidence to quote it with confidence,
Yeah,
but confidence is everything when it comes to when you're self-employed and quoting
sure.
a rate. I had a situation once where a consultant, we pitched four consultants to a medical device company. All four of them could have knocked it out of the park. They all had anywhere from 15 to 20 years of experience. A couple had PhDs, et cetera. Super intelligent, smart consultants. And so we said, here are the four. Three of them are in the range of 350, 400 an hour, but one of them is an outlier. Her rate's $800 an hour. We're not going to tell you which is which because we want you to pick the right person for you. Sure enough, they wanted the person that was $800 an hour. And when I double backed with the consultant before we pitched them, I said, "You realize your rate is twice as high as any of the other people we're pitching." She says, "I don't care. I'm worth it. And that's what I charge."
Yeah,
And she's the one that won the work.
right.
And we asked the client, "Are you sure was it a close call? Do you want to go with somebody else? Because you're going to be spending twice as much to hire this person." And they said, "No, no, we definitely want that person." So when I say confidence is everything, there was no reason that woman could be charging $800 an hour versus the others. She just had the backbone to do it.
And in that world too, when you're dealing with clientele that stand to gain a significant amount of revenue or operational efficiency or insert problem here, you know, you can actually come across less credible by not charging as much money.
Yes,
Like they
absolutely.
might look at it and be like, what's wrong with it? Is this like discounts express? Like, why is this person so much cheaper than everybody else? And they'll actually trust you less for
Yes,
charging less, which is counterintuitive, but
it is
it's just
counterintuitive.
how it works. Talk to me a little bit about that consulting world, Liz. You know, there's a ton of coaches these days, and it seems like it's really simple just to become a coach and then start offering services to people. But Fortune 500 consulting is a massively different venture to be successful in. What are the key differences there? I guess like what qualifies somebody to be able to be a Fortune 500 consultant versus a coach for a sub $3 million business?
Yeah, it's actually goes right to my second key of the book, which is to be known for something and be memorable. So a lot of people think that to make more money or to win more contracts, they need to be a jack of all trades or a Jill of all skills, when actually the reverse is true. The more narrow you can define your niche and become well known and an expert for that niche, the more people are willing to pay for it,
Hmm.
and the more people are going to remember you, right? So Travis Chappelle is all about how to make more money. And so you're not about cutting costs and all the other ways to investing or whatever. There's lots of ways to build wealth, but you're known for how to drive more revenue, how to make more money. So your niche is a little bit more narrow. The same is true with consulting. If you put yourself in your client's shoes, they don't want to hire a jack of all trades. They want to hire an expert to solve their problem.
Hmm.
So yes, it limits the potential situations where you can be hired. But when that situation comes up and you know that you can knock it out of the park every single time, that's what actually leads to a successful business.
Yeah. How do you go about even finding the right contacts to pitch or to put the deal in front of at those types of
That's
massively bloated
and
bureaucracy based companies?
yes. I learned many years ago. So that my talent agency is 15, 16 years old now. And I learned probably around year 3 or 4 that submitting requests for proposals or answers to requests for proposals or dealing with the government or anything that requires all of that, it's like pushing a boulder uphill.
Yeah.
It's it's just not worth the time. It's better to have really strong, trusting relationships,
Mm.
keep in touch with people. I actually wrote a blog on how to keep a love list to drive business. And this is just our company language is we want to show some people some love that we haven't forgotten about them and we can provide them something of value 2, 3 times a year just to keep us fresh in their minds and so that they feel comfortable calling us when a need for our consulting expertise comes up. So keeping a love list or keeping your network warm, we already talked about the importance of building relationships and trust and being known for that niche. That's what drives the opportunities. So my consulting firm doesn't specialize in everything. We specialize in organizational effectiveness. So all things tangential to core HR, leadership development, how to pivot to hybrid workforce, how to return to office, to how to do succession planning, performance management, total rewards, all of those things that are tangential to the core of HR, right? So we did start the business. We did everything. We had process improvement and everything, but it diluted our memorability.
Mm.
We didn't stick in people's minds. And the same is true if you're an individual. You need to come up with, I call it a tagline, get your keywords into your tagline and be known for that so that when that situation pops up, people think to call you.
Yeah,
Not
you're
sure I
top of
answered your
mind.
question directly.
No, yeah, that's great. That's great.
Okay.
Um, Personal finance side of this, Liz, you're starting businesses, you're a solopreneur. There's a lot of advantages. There's a lot of pros to being a solopreneur, including freedom, control over your time and schedule, to, at least to a certain degree. But there are some cons as well. It's a roller coaster. You have some great months and you have some not so great months. And you have some months where you're like, why did I ever do this at all to begin with? What's your advice for somebody just starting off doing this in terms of how do I know that I'm somebody that should pursue this as a career path versus staying down what I've currently been doing?
two key things. One goes back to that confidence. It takes a tremendous amount of confidence to strike out on your own and to know that, okay, this is probably going to be the hardest job I've ever had. I'm going to have to push my boundaries. I'm going to have to do things I'm not comfortable doing, whether that's negotiating a rate or speaking in public or writing a blog, whatever it is. I'm going to have to push my boundaries. So confidence is number one. But number two, around the personal finance part, it's well, the confidence goes to the billing too, but you also need to have, of course, a safety net. A lot of people are going to say, if you're going to quit your job and start something new, you need to have at least 6 months of savings. Yeah, 6 months is nice. I've seen people do it fine with 3 or 4 months of savings. And what that means is that you can cover your day-to-day expenses for at least 3 to 4 months, right? Then a way to get cash flow going when you're just starting out is to subcontract. Subcontracting is not as lucrative because you're going to give up anywhere from 30 to 50% of your revenue to the company that's finding the work, but it's a lot faster than building your network. And while you're developing your brand and your website and your pricing and your positioning, you can be out there doing work as a subcontractor, but that's a short-term solution. And then another key tip that I really just thought of in the last few years, way before I could have benefited from it. Before you leave your full-time job, if you own your home, get approved for a home equity line of credit because you need a W-2 to get that credit. You need to show a W-2 pay stub. It's very difficult to get a loan for anything, even a car, when you're self-employed because they just don't trust sole proprietor income or 1099 income because you're right, it's erratic. So they want loan companies want to see the W-2, banks want to see it. So if you're thinking about making the leap to being self-employed, get that HELOC. You don't have to use it. It might cost maybe $500 or $1,000 to get it set up and in place, but that's your rainy day fund. That's your super backup safety net. And that gives you a lot more confidence that you you can get the ball rolling and get enough momentum without some impending financial disaster.
So you have a couple of businesses, but you also mentioned at the top of the show that you are investing in real estate as well. Do you have a certain strategy when it comes to money in personal that goes, this percentage goes here, this percentage goes here? I always have an emergency fund here. I put some in real estate. I pour money back into the business. Do you have kind of an overarching strategy there?
Not necessarily an overarching strategy, but the single biggest tip that I can share that made the difference between being on a treadmill and never really having enough wealth to now have enough money to retire, frankly. And that tip was every time I got paid, I put 40% into a separate bank. So let's say I had a client pay me a $10,000 invoice. I put 40% into a separate bank, which is a lot.
You're talking about a separate bank completely or a separate
Completely
account?
separate bank.
Completely different bank.
Because, well, people might have more fiscal discipline than I do, but I have no fiscal discipline. If I log into my primary bank account and I see I have $6,000 in savings, and I know that's for quarterly tax and or retirement, I'm still going to think, ooh, to my daughter, I'm going to say, ooh, we can go to Hawaii. Right.
Yeah.
Ooh, we have enough to go on vacation because I have no fiscal discipline. So I literally had to hide the money from myself.
Yeah.
I put 40% into the other bank. Then it was time to pay quarterly tax, which was anywhere from probably $12,000 to $25,000. I had to transfer the money. And then this is where the magic happens, is when it's time to do my annual tax return, there would be, lo and behold, $20,000 to $25,000 left over. That's the money that went into my solo 401k or my SEP IRA, my self-employed retirement account. That lowers your taxable income right away. And then that money grows tax-free. And then that's how I built wealth over time.
Yeah.
It was by
Awesome.
hiding the money from myself.
Hide the money
Now,
from
of
yourself.
course, there were lean months, right? So there was, when I was actually just doing consulting work before I started my businesses, my income ranged from $5,000 a month to $24,000 a month. Obviously, $24,000 a month, it's good living, but you can't live as a single mom in San Francisco on $5,000 a month.
Yeah.
Not possible. And so I would borrow money from the secret bank account, and then there'd be a big sticky note on the top of my computer, above my computer, that said, you owe the secret bank $3,000. And the next time an invoice came in, I'd pay it back.
Hmm.
So I did have to borrow money from the secret bank from once in a while, but I was bound and determined to keep feeding that retirement savings because that's what lowers your effective tax rate.
I
And
love, yeah,
I know this is about earning more money, but if you pay less tax, you're keeping more of what you earn. So it's
absolutely.
very similar.
It definitely qualifies. It definitely qualifies. And then putting money in an account like that that's going to grow and compound tax free over time is also a way to make sure that you're earning more money. So that's a
Yes. And then if you
more
use
than
the right
acceptable
kind,
answer.
you use the right kind of account, then you can borrow against it, etc.
Mm. And so 40% goes into that account to get it out. It's like the same thing for it's the same thing for all of us. I think we all like to think that we're more disciplined than we are. But if you see excess funds in your primary bank account, it's just easier to spend it. It's
It
easier to be like,
is.
oh, we can afford to go out to eat at that nice place, or we can afford to take this fancy trip, or we can afford to buy that car that we really want to buy that we really shouldn't be buying. If the money's gone and invested into accounts or in a real estate investment, you can't access that money. Or at least it's not in you don't look at it when you pull up your bank account every day to check the balance, so I love that advice. It's kind of the same thing. It's kind of the same thing even on the health side of things. It's like if I know that I am not disciplined enough to keep bad food in my house because I'll just eat it all. I don't have a shut off valve when it comes to there's really good food here. So the answer has been for me, we don't have bad food at the house, like basically unless it's the holidays. If it's the holidays,
Right.
I'm gonna eat some bad food.
Yes.
Um but yeah, for the most part, it's like I don't trust myself, and why make it it's that old expression, the Annie Oakley, why shoot yourself in the foot just to see if you can walk. It's like there's too many things to be disciplined about throughout the day. Just make it easier for yourself to remain disciplined by putting some checks and balances in place that gets your money away from your face all the time and gets
Yes.
it somewhere else where you can't see it. I love that advice. And then is real estate a relatively new asset class for you, or is this something you've been doing for a long time?
Uh, it's relatively new. I'd say in the last 5 years or so.
Okay.
Partly because one of the ways that I became a landlord is I moved out of San Francisco and I moved to Nevada to lower my taxes. I'm saving about $18,000 a year by living in just across the border in Reno, in
Hmm.
Nevada, than when I lived in California. That's a ton of money, 18 grand a year.
Sure is.
And I'm a 4 hour drive from San Francisco where I used to live. So it wasn't that big of a change. But I kept the real estate in San Francisco and now I'm leasing it. So it's a 3 bedroom house. I lease it for $5,500 a month. That more than covers the mortgage and the insurance and everything else. But sort of happened into that. Real estate in Nevada is a lot less expensive. So
Yeah.
I was able to not sell that property and keep it and still buy into another one in Reno, Nevada.
Yeah. Nice. Is it your intention to pay off the houses, or do you find that it's better to put your money elsewhere?
It is my intention to pay off the house, with the San Francisco house in particular, because when I die, my daughter will inherit it and she'll get the stepped up evaluation. So that's one way to avoid any capital gains tax.
Yeah.
And I don't need the money that's in the house, in the equity that's in that house. I don't need that to live. So that's sort of my nest egg that I'll leave to my daughter.
Love it. Yeah. If you can ever, if you're moving to a new place, if there's any possible way to keep the house that you had first, keep the damn house. Every time I've sold a house, I have regretted selling that house. So every single time. So this last like couple times, I was just like, we are not selling this. This is like, even if we have to scrap and scrape and borrow money to be able to make sure that if we move or whatever life event happens, like doesn't matter. We are going to keep this house and we're going to figure out a way to keep the house, because that's like the old expression in real estate. You don't wait to buy real estate, you buy real estate and wait. Especially if you're in markets that are kind of growing, which Reno definitely is, because there's a lot of vagrants moving from San Francisco that need a place
Yes,
to
a
stay.
lot of people
Yeah.
escaping that
I
13.3% state income tax.
I did the same thing just further south of you. I'm from LA and I'm in Vegas now, so same thing. Yeah, just we're 3-4 hours away from LA, or a 45-minute flight. But yeah, but it's a little bit cheaper out here in Vegas than
Yes.
it is in LA. So, Liz, it's been a fun conversation. I appreciate you for taking the time. What, as we kind of move into the last segment here, what would be the thing that you would do if you had to start all over? If you were starting over in 2025 and you had to go make more money this year, what would you do?
Well, that's an awkward question because I have 4 decades of work experience, so it wouldn't necessarily be starting over. I'd be
So you can
looking,
keep, yeah, you can keep your knowledge and your experience, but you don't have any money and you got to go make money.
I'd go back into independent consulting
Yeah.
because that's my bread and butter, and I know my niche. I could do that with my eyes closed. Even though I personally have not done that work in 10 years, I could easily step right back into it because I did it so many times. I've got a resume with dozens of projects that show that I'm an expert in doing that. Um, so that was always sort of my fallback. Even when I started the first business, I thought, well, if this doesn't work out, I'll just keep consulting.
Yeah.
And actually, those first years of the business, I was what I called a slasher because I was a consultant slash entrepreneur. And
Mm.
then as my income and the time I spent as the scales tilted, then I would change it and I'd say I'm an entrepreneur slash consultant. And
Mm.
then eventually the consultant just faded away altogether.
Yeah.
So it was a gradual transition. I didn't just stop consulting and build a business because I needed income.
Right.
So there was a ramping up of one and a ramping down of the other. And so that's an easy way to now it's called a side hustle, right? But that's an easy way to start to build up a business and revenue and or your niche and your memorability in whatever it is that you're going to strike out to do. You can do
Yeah.
it part-time. Even as a full-time employee, there's ways to tweak your LinkedIn profile, there's ways to be perceived as an expert. There's a lot of things that you can do as a full-time employee before you make the leap so that you already have some momentum going into the new business.
Well, it speaks to a really important thing, which is if you invest into yourself, if you become confident in your skill and the way that you bring value to the world, then you will not have to worry about money ever again to a certain degree because money comes and goes. Businesses go up, they go down, they flourish, they exit, or they go bankrupt or they shut down. Like, and there's so many things that can happen and that can affect that. And some of those things are completely outside of your control. But the things that will never go away are your competence and your connections. Your competence would, to me, break down into your knowledge base and your skill set. And then your connections would be the people that you know. Those things will never go away, which is why it's always a good idea to continually improve those parts of your life because they'll save you. They'll save you in times where the money is just not coming. So, Liz, thanks so much for doing this. I appreciate you. Let's move into the last segment here, though. Just some quick random questions, quick random answers. You ready?
Sure.
What profession other than your own do you think that it would have been fun to master?
Luxury travel agent.
If you could sit on a park bench with somebody, past or present, and chat for an hour, who would it be?
That's a tie between Oprah Winfrey or Richard Branson.
Both good options. How do you like to consume information best? Books, audiobooks, blogs, podcasts, YouTube videos?
Audiobooks.
What is your go-to pump-up song, Liz?
The first one that jumped to mind is Celebrate Good Times. I think it's by Kool and the Gang. So obviously I'm not young and hip, but that's the first one that popped to mind.
That's always a good one. That's like an anthem. What is something that you are not very good at?
Math.
And as we get everything wrapped up here, Liz, where can people go to get more from you?
Sixkeys.info.
Sixkeys.info. Is that the number six or six spelled out?
Thankfully, I did it both ways.
Perfect.
So sixkeys.info. That's the landing page for the book. From there, you can learn more about me. You can learn more about PICA. You can there's links to buy the book from various places or the audiobook or the ebook, whatever. But yes, sixkeys.info is much easier to remember than my name or how to spell succeeding as a solopreneur.
Yeah. Sixkeys.info, which is also a really great hack, by the way, to buy other domains that other people could potentially misspell. I think I own every variation of my last name that I could possibly imagine that somebody would type into Google and they all forward to my website just to make sure
Yes,
that make it easier for people to find you. You know what I mean?
exactly. So that's why it's .info, not .com, because that was $2,000 more.
Yeah.
So I'm all about keeping expenses low. So it's 6keys.info. And if any of you are listening, or I'll talk directly to your listeners, if you're listening right now and you do not yet own your domain, the domain for your name, go buy it now because you never know where life is going to take you.
Very, very true. Very true. 6keys.info to get more from Liz. Liz, thank you so much for doing this. Everybody else listening, tuning in, remember, money only solves your money problems, but it is a little bit easier to solve the rest of your problems if you got some money in the bank. So let's solve that problem first here on the Travis Makes Money podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Catch you next time. Peace out.